Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is the Hump Day edition, the Wednesday edition of the Michael Dukes Show, and we could see Friday from here. That's right, it's the downhill slide all the way to Friday from right here. And we're ready to go. We're continuing, as we will be, I think, all the way through August, with our discussions with local politicians running for reelection in statewide office, for election or reelection, incumbents and candidates. Today is no different. Starting off this morning here in hour one, in just a moment, we're going to be talking with Representative Cliff Groh, who is the current incumbent for House District 18. And then we're going to have a conversation with him for the full hour. And then as we go into hour two, we'll jump into it with our visit with State Senator Mike Shower, who will be coming on board to talk with us about state of the state and nation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to be diving in on all that and getting things ready to go. Hope you are ready. Tomorrow on the program, just FYI, Lee Ellis will be joining us along with Representative Elise Galvin. And so another full show for you tomorrow. And then Friday, History Channel Top Shot champion Chris Chang will be joining us on Friday, as well as Willie Waffle. So again, a full week all lined up and ready to go. And that leaves us leading us right up to it here. It's important for us to interview and discuss things with various politicians and candidates just to see where they think we need to be going, what they seem to think are the important issues. We'll talk about the issues that I think are important as well and see if we can get them to line up and have that conversation. Because as of August 20th, that is, of course, the primary election day. With ranked choice voting, that doesn't matter for many races. Only two House races does that really matter in. And of course, the race for the U.S. House of Representatives. Everything else is kind of just a straw poll to got to get a stick your finger in the air, wet your finger, and figure out which way the wind's blowing. That's about what it's going to give you for many races. But it is still important to get that information out there prior to the election time, and we're going to be talking about this. All right, well, let's get started. Since now's the time, and Representative Cliff Groh is over in the green room. I can see him; he's ready to go. Let's just get started here and get things cracking. We'll start off right here with Cliff Groh. Good morning, sir. How are you this morning?
I'm well, Michael. How are you?
You know, it's another beautiful day. At least it's not snowing. I mean, that's what I can say right now. At least it's not snowing. I feel pretty good about that. So it's good to have you back on the program. Thanks for coming on board, Cliff. Of course, as I just mentioned, election season, and this is where we get a chance to see folks that normally we don't get a chance to talk to very often. So we want to talk a little bit about what's happened and kind of get a recap from you and everything else. But before we get started, for folks out there who don't know you, who aren't familiar with you, give us a little bit of, who you are, where you came from, where does District 18, what areas does that cover? Are some of the listeners in District 18? Give us a little bit of background about Cliff Groh here.
Sure. And thanks, Michael. Appreciate the chance to be on. Michael, I'm a lifelong Alaskan. I was born and raised in Anchorage. I live here in Anchorage with my wife, Teresa, I was elected 2 years ago for the first time to the Alaska State House. So I'm a freshman. I'm a dad. My adult son, Kevin, lives here in Anchorage. I'm a former prosecutor, and I'm running for reelection to a second term because I care deeply about Alaska's future. I helped create the permanent fund dividend back when I was a legislative staff member in the 1980s. I'm committed to saving it in the face of some forces that want to end it. I also very much want to save the permanent fund. And I'm up against some forces that would like to erode the value and ultimately spend away the permanent fund, something that I think would be terrible for our state. I believe in good roads, strong schools, reliable public safety, and I'm committed to providing that for my constituents and all Alaskans to the best of my ability. I represent House District 18 in the Alaska State House. Alaska House District 18 runs across North Anchorage, sort of making a motion here, like Anchorage's headband. It's best described by neighborhood. I represent House District 18, basically all the parts of Joint Base Elmendorf, Richardson, J-Bear, all the parts where people live. I also represent all of the Government Hill neighborhood and parts of 4 other neighborhoods, North Muldoon, North Downtown, North Fairview, and North Mountain View. The people in my district work very hard and are a lot more likely to have a second job and a second home. And I'm proud to and feel honored to represent Alaska House District 18 in the Alaska State House.
You know, Cliff, you said you're a freshman legislator, and so give me a little bit of a recap of your first experience here. Obviously, as an aide, you probably saw how the sausage was made back in the day, but this is your first time in the spotlight, so to speak, and out on the floor. Give me a brief recap of this of these sessions and your thoughts on how did it go, kind of the process. Just kind of an overall feel for where you came from and going through it now, what your thoughts are on how the sausage is made today, maybe versus in 1980.
Well, yeah, I first worked in the legislature after 1980, and I also worked for the legislative staff in the 1980s, as well as I also worked with the legislature a lot as special assistant to the Commissioner of Alaska Revenue, a job I held later. Well, it is very interesting being in the legislature, something that I have observed for decades and not actually, as you point out, been a member of before I was sworn in January of 2023. I'm happy that this past legislature, the 2 years I was elected for, in those 2 sessions, we did some good things. We got a modest boost two one-time boost to education funding for K through 12 education. I believe we need to do more while obviously watching the educational system to see that it provides the best outcomes. I'm going to say you can't do that on the cheap, and I'm a proud product of the Anchorage Public Schools myself, Inland View, Central, West, High. And so I'm also proud that we didn't break the bank. The state legislature in previous years spent on billions and billions and billions of dollars in savings. And we did not do that in the last 2 years. We also were able to avoid doing some crazy things, and some good things on things like energy as well as education. There's a lot more to be done, and that's why I'm running. I'm also proud of my record in helping veterans in the military. I led the charge to provide additional funding for veteran service officers who provide valuable advice to our veterans, to whom we owe so much. And I have also worked hard to try to help the state of Alaska provide more information to military spouses and dependents about educational and employment opportunities in our state. And we really want to make sure that Alaska is a home, not just a duty station for the military members who serve our country as well as their families. I am the legislator of all the 60 who has worked on the longest what I perceive as the biggest problem facing our state overall, which is our long-term structural deficit. And I have worked a lot to try to bring people together to try to find solutions for that, to make sure that we have sufficient funding to provide the good roads, strong schools, reliable public safety, effective health care that we need, as well as sustainable and rising permanent fund dividends. And what's really important there is to make sure that, like I said, we have enough revenues to pay for the things that even the most libertarian Alaskans would recognize that we need to have. Like I said, a good police force, good roads, and good public schools.
Cliff Groh is our guest, incumbent for House District 18. We're talking with him about this legislative session. Of course, there was one thing that sucked up all the oxygen in the room. Normally, it's the PFD, but this year it was education, and it was education funding. And I know you've talked about this several times. You had a tour of the Anchorage schools, and you talked about some of the things there. But one of the things that continued to come back to me over and over again was this argument. Now, education is the second largest line item budget in the budget, $2.4 billion for education. And yet we continued to hear out there from a lot of folks that we'd shortchanged education. We had flat funded it. Now, while it's true that the BSA had not received much of an increase, a percent or two since 2017, we still were funding of the 5 of the 7 years since the 2017 factoring of the BSA. We had spent 5 of the 7 years between $10 and $50 million over the BSA every year. So this idea that somehow we were flat funding education just because we weren't increasing the base student formula itself, we were still spending millions of dollars beyond that. And of course, that's not the only funding mechanism for schools that we have spent over the course of years. And I'm a little concerned that the rhetoric seemed to be around how we were flat funding it. And that was part of the argument why we needed to change it today. But, how much is enough? I guess is my question becomes, how much is enough? The $650 million or $650 BSA, okay, that's a good start. But I have a feeling already, and I'm hearing whispers and talk that we're going to be facing this again in the coming year. That there's going to be another push for a continual BSA increase. So, in your mind, Cliff, how much is enough in a BSA increase? How much is enough in education spend overall?
I think that we have let our schools, and I know we've let our schools become inadequately funded. Our K through 12 education funding is just scandalous in so many ways. And you mentioned and I appreciate you mentioning my tour of schools that my constituents go to. I've been to 10 schools my constituents go to, and I'll go to more when school starts up again in August, because it looks like my constituents go to about total of about 15 schools in Anchorage, in the Anchorage School District. The class sizes are too high. You have crumbling schools in a lot of places with crummy equipment. You have long-term substitutes, teachers that do not have bachelor's degrees that are being supervised by administrators and that are taking away time that they would need to administer. You have teachers fleeing. Michael, the teachers in Alaska have the worst retirement system in the country. They don't get Social Security. They don't have pensions. And it's just amazing for just the teachers as well as firefighters, police officers, public employees generally in Alaska that we're able to keep this together at all. But it particularly shows up, one place particularly shows up is in our schools. And I came out and pushed for both a higher base student allocation or BSA than the one that we passed, putting it in the formula. And I also see that and understand that we need to have that number inflation proofed. Michael, it is crazy. It is nuts. It is insane that our state has a better financing plan for prisons than it does for schools. And I say this as a former prosecutor who's put hundreds of people in prison in my career, and recognizes very much the importance of public safety. And one of the things I think we need more of in our state is more police officers and more prosecutors. But we also need to have good teachers that stay and don't flee because of the crummy compensation system and crummy pensions.
We're going to continue with Cliff Groh in a minute, but we're up against the break here. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, we're in the break right now with Cliff Groh, who is the incumbent for House District 18. We're going to get into the discussion about defined benefits and the retirement system here shortly. We're also going to talk a little bit about the energy policy and the issue of Alaska, especially Cook Inlet gas and more. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into this deal on education because, again, as I mentioned earlier, it is the second largest line item in the budget. But I hate to repeat myself, and I want folks on the radio to be able to hear more as we go through. Cliff, what do you think is going to be the biggest? What are you going to be if you go back to the legislature this go around? What are going to be your biggest priorities as you start here into the next session? What is Cliff Groh going to be focusing on specifically, laser focused? Your top, 2 or 3 items.
Save the permanent fund. Save the permanent fund dividend. Diversify our revenues, and then, like I said before, keep increasing the resources to help our military and our veterans. Our permanent fund is at risk. It has all kinds of risks, and they range from eroding its real value by spending too much and not keeping ahead of inflation. They also include the very substantial risk that the permanent fund earnings reserve account will not be able to provide the funding that provides over half the funding for the budget right now, in the percent of market value draw, or POMV draw for short. I have introduced a constitutional amendment to further protect the permanent fund. That constitutional amendment proposal got the support. I was pleased that it got the support of 1/4 of the Alaska House of Representatives. It's unfortunate it did not come up for a vote. I am also very concerned about the permanent fund's investments in governance, and I'm concerned about the recent revelations about conflicts of interest. And I have also introduced a resolution that would create standing committees in the House and Senate, specifically and devoted and totally devoted to oversight of the permanent fund's governance and making sure that we avoid conflicts of interest. I'm concerned also that the permanent fund could slip into dumb investments and not invest for a total return over time, but instead fall for a very financially risky and economically risky projects, and we lose money that way as well. I think we need to save the permanent fund dividend as well. And I have helped create it back in the 1980s. I'm very proud of my role in that, and of the billions of dollars that have gone out to individual Alaskans since the creation of the permanent fund dividend back in the early 1980s. It's obviously a political football now, And I think there needs to be a comprehensive solution that both keeps the permanent fund dividend sustainable and growing, as well as save the permanent fund. And I've pushed for that. That has not happened the first 2 years I'm in the legislature. I hope to be more successful in the future.
Yeah, no, I'm very concerned right now about the permanent fund and the apparent conflicts. I'm concerned about this push, and including the white paper that came out of the Permanent Fund Corporation that talks about this discussion about folding the ERA into the corpus and opening up the entire corpus to the POMV draw and other things, because I think that has some really dangerous side effects and potentially gives them access to the whole pot of money, which could eat the seed corn for future years. So I think we're in alignment on that in basic philosophy. But this is kind of a crisis of our own making, and we can talk about that here as we go through. But we're about to rejoin. So let's get back into it. The Michael Duke Show continues. Cliff Groh is our guest. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Please like and share, like and follow, ring the bell, and do everything else. Here we go. Jumping back into it right now with Cliff Groh.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right, Cliff Groh is our guest, candidate for re-election in House District 18 on the Democratic ticket. Cliff, before we went to break, I was asking you about education, and you didn't answer the question, which was, how much is enough? I mean, we are the sixth highest in spending in the nation on a per capita basis for schools and for students. You talked a lot about things like, schools crumbling, class sizes, all these other things. But this is a function, in my mind, in part, of management and of the educational system of itself. I mean, if something's fundamentally broken in the system and we're not doing it right, we're providing the funding. They don't seem to be doing an adequate job in taking care of it. How much is enough? If 640 is not enough, and it has to be this higher amount for the BSA instead of one-time funding, how much per student is enough in the long run?
Michael, I'm actually on record on this. I supported and support now an increase that was recommended by and supported by the Alaska Association of School Boards, the Anchorage School District, of $1,413. I supported that last session. I also support inflation proofing. As I said before, it is nuts and completely wrong that we have a better financing system in our fair state of Alaska for prisons than for our students in K through 12 education. That just can't be the right way to go. Additionally, when you talk about the spending for education in Alaska, I've studied this a lot in the overall question of public spending in Alaska versus other states. No other state in the country has a bush, has rural areas, and it's obviously more expensive to build and maintain schools out there. And you'll obviously also have some severe weather events that have damaged schools, and it's more difficult and expensive generally to provide education in rural areas. The Alaska Constitution requires that. It's also more difficult to get teachers out there and keep teachers out there. Although we have a problem with attracting teachers and retaining teachers throughout our state in the urban areas as well as in the bush. And you were kind enough to point out that I have taken a tour of schools, just like I've taken a tour of roads in my district. But the tour of schools showed things like, there used to be, you have a single opening in the Anchorage School District, and there'd be like a dozen or 24 applications 15 or 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Now, as one principal told me, he feels very fortunate if there are 2 applicants for a job, because that means he has a choice. And in a lot of cases, like I said, you have some people who are long-term substitutes who don't have bachelor's degrees. Not just not education degrees, but don't have bachelor's degrees. obviously, you want to have teachers who are qualified, who know how to teach our children. And I just can't stress that enough. I feel very fortunate that I had a good education in the Anchorage School District. And in the years I went there and learned a lot, and it allowed me to be successful in life,
Right.
and enjoy life more. And those are the kinds of opportunities that I had that I would like to have, the students of today and the future here in Alaska have. And Michael, I'm committed to doing everything I can to make that occur.
Well, I mean, look, Alaska is already 11% higher than the average teacher wage in the country. We're in the top 10 as far as teacher wages. What more do we need to do? I mean, I know the governor had his plan where he wanted to incentivize teachers with a $5, $10, or $15,000 payout. Is that a solution? Did you support that idea, or what is the solution? How high does it have to be to start to attract these people?
Well, you got to look at the compensation as a total package, and I keep stressing that. It is absolutely clear that we have the worst compensation system for teachers in the United States, and especially the worst retirement system. And you have so many teachers leaving, including people that I know, that I have met, and people I met in the 2022 campaign in the North Muldoon part of my district. I went, husband and wife teacher. They had a young child, and I went back to walk and see them last month when after the session ended, I walked door to door in my campaign, and I walked up, and their house is cleared out, and there is a sofa seat out in the front with a free sign in front, and it's clear to me what happened is that they have left. And I hear all kinds of other stories of teachers leaving because the teachers don't get Social Security, and they have no pension. They have this 401k style that just doesn't, a substitute for a pension that does not work. And this is a broader problem among public employees in Alaska, and a reason we have some crummy public services here in our state, Michael. There's a firefighter that I spent a lot of time with. I've had dinner at one of the downtown Anchorage fire station and talked to a number of firefighters. And as one of the firefighters told me, "Hey, Cliff, the only firefighters who are staying here now are ones who are completely demon hunters and fishers, or have family members here, or both, because it does not make sense for firefighters and paramedics to stay in Alaska, given how terrible the compensation system is."
Well, I want to talk about the defined benefits because, here's the thing. I mean, we can demonize a defined contribution type plan or a 401k, but there's a lot of good points to it. I'm not saying that the defined contribution maybe shouldn't be increased, but it's a far cry from not having any kind of retirement. Many people in the private sector would love to have a defined contributions program. Defined benefits was brought back. Of course, it passed the Senate. It did not pass the House. Defined benefits nearly gutted the finances of this state through the tier 1 through tier 3 situation. We still owe currently over $7 billion in unfunded liability to the previous tranches of the defined benefits plan. And the new defined benefits plan has come out, and the analysis of it financially is that it's still going to cost us, over $1 billion in 10 years of added costs. According to the fiscal note that came out, the last fiscal note that was delayed after the Senate voted on it. I mean, this is a significant challenge for us and a significant financial danger if we get back into a defined benefits program. In fact, almost all federal agencies, big companies, they've stepped away from defined benefits because you cannot predict what the cost of those benefits will be 25 years from now. That's the big challenge. And I know it's a great golden parachute that people would love to have. Hell, I would love to have a defined benefits plan, but I understand that the financial risks definitely outweigh the rewards.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on that, Michael, and I'm going to do something that, I certainly would be advised, not to do from a political standpoint. I actually wrote a paper for the University of Alaska about the unfunded liabilities of PERS and TERS. It's probably embarrassing, but I guess it's just a warts and all show, right? I'm told it has the unofficial record for the highest number of footnotes of any paper published by the University of Alaska. Anyway, but what I want to tell you about it is what I learned was how different that former system for defined benefits was than the one we have now, the proposal we have now, which has all kinds of safeguards. I'm convinced we'll save money because of the avoiding the very high costs of training and recruiting and training new employees that is built in with the current crummy system we have. And there are all kinds of guardrails, safeguards, and protections that have been added to the current proposal that the Senate passed that the House was not allowed to vote on. It never came to a vote on the House floor. I was disappointed by that. So I think that we would be money ahead if we adopted a defined benefits plan, both in the sense of the straight dollars over time, but also in terms of the much better public services delivered by competent and well-qualified public employees around our state. And by that, I think we should describe who they are. A large group is teachers. Another substantial group is firefighters. Another group are police officers, state troopers, more generically known as peace officers. Snowplow truck drivers, people that are really valuable and provide very valuable and critical services to Alaskans. That's what I'm for as one of a number of steps to help our state and make improvements. Michael, we have to have a state where people thrive and not just survive. And I am very much opposed to just managing Alaska's decline. I've lived here all my life, and I have seen the state change very substantially. But just because oil revenues decline can't mean that, like some people seem to think, that our whole plan's got to be we're all going to leave and the last ones turn out the lights. I'm not signing up for that. I'm opposed to that, and I'm doing everything in my power, first as a citizen and now as a legislator, to help us get to a better Alaska, the kind of Alaska that we deserve. And that, in my view, would need to include what we had for decades, which is a defined benefit systems with a lot of protections and safeguards to help attract and retain a qualified workforce of teachers, firefighters, police officers, like I said, snowplow truck drivers.
So your assertion is that, and of course, this initial proposal was for defined benefits to be for basically for first responders, firefighters, police, things like that. Then there was a discussion about including the teachers, the TERS program. This would spread to every level of government. This would be every government employee would eventually be on a defined benefits program. And your assertion is that would be cheaper than what we're doing today. We would save money than what we're doing today. It would not encumber an additional cost in the next 10 years.
I think we're going to be money ahead when you count the substantial costs of the loss of both the recruitment and the training. It costs a lot to train a new police officer. It costs a lot to train a new firefighter. And what we're seeing now is our state is a training ground for other states. And I want to tell you, when I had dinner at the downtown fire station, the firefighters were apoplectic. They were beyond angry, beyond enraged by the fact that a paramedic, an Anchorage Fire Department paramedic, had been trained by the Anchorage Fire Department, went after a relatively short period to Tacoma. And now, Michael, that refugee from Alaska's crummy retirement system for public employees, that paramedic trained by with public dollars here by the Anchorage Fire Department is now starring in a recruiting video for the Tacoma Fire Department. It's enraging to his former colleagues, the people that went to school with him. And that's the kind of example that we don't want. We don't want our well-trained, well-qualified teachers, firefighters, police officers to get a couple of years experience in Alaska and then flee, leaving us to fight to try to get new people to hold those positions and then train them. That's a dumb system, and I'm opposed to it.
Cliff Groh is our guest, incumbent for State House District 18. We're going to continue here in just a moment. One final segment. We're going to talk about fiscal plans. That's up next. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Cliff Groh is our guest. Cliff, I mean, the Reason Foundation got up and made their presentation, and their estimates were even more than the fiscal note. They said overall the cost of this could be $10 billion almost. So all these other guys, and Alaska is unique. I mean, many other states, in fact, most other states, like I said earlier, the federal government, GE, Delta Airlines, GM, they've all, discarded defined benefits because, again, of the uncertainty of what the cost of those benefits would be 10, 20, 15 years, 15, 20 years out down the road. How are you so certain that this would be, and again, this amorphous cost of training and other things? Yes, it does cost money to train, but studies show that generally speaking, employees don't leave because of pay. That's not the biggest issue. Generally, it's work culture and environment that causes them to leave. So what is, is it really just the pay? Is there something going on inside the system that's making people want to leave because of the culture? How can you guarantee that this is going to be cheaper in the end or save us money? Yet, I mean, is the argument it'll cost us more, but that'll be money that's then offset by not rehiring because we've locked them in and they can't leave? What's the answer there?
I like having well-trained and well-qualified people teaching our students, teaching our children, putting out our fires, helping with medical emergencies.
I don't think anybody doesn't want that, Cliff. I don't think anybody doesn't want that. But there's a balance of cost, cost versus rewards. I mean, sure, I would love to have, somebody who would make sure that my family is safe 24 hours a day, but I can't afford to pay somebody $200,000 a year to protect us. There's the same kind of thing in the public sector where there's a balance of risk versus reward.
Right. Well, there's another big example. Remember, I studied this a lot when I wrote that paper for the University of Alaska in terms of the failures and the problems the old system ran into. And a giant factor was an explosion in healthcare costs in Alaska in the 90s and the first 10 years of the 2000s. That the actuaries could not believe, so much so that they refused to believe it and then went with old estimates and then lied about it. That's why the state got hundreds of millions of dollars in a settlement in a lawsuit with a former actuary. We have all the new legislation, the legislation I support in the current legislature, and would love to have had a chance to vote for on the House floor, or at least debate on the House floor and then have a vote. Has all kinds, as I said before, Michael, additional protections and guardrails to make sure that didn't happen. We also have gotten over that enormous period of medical inflation in Alaska. By the way, that goes to a different problem that I've talked about a lot and worked on a lot, which is the very high healthcare costs in our state. And that's not as bad a problem as it was, in the sense that we're not as extreme as we were 15 years ago, but it's still pretty bad in the sense of much higher costs here in our state than in other states. But on defined benefits, I think it helps us in all kinds of ways. And I think particularly given what we ask and need our teachers, firefighters, police officers, all kinds of other jobs to do, we need to have a way to attract and retain well-qualified people. You raise culture. I don't think culture is the issue. I mean, I've worked a long time like you have, Michael. Not to insult either one of us, but we've had been around a while. I would dare say we've both been in more than one job, if I had to bet. And we've seen different cultures, but what I'm seeing is this sort of massive gap in compensation that is just causing us to hemorrhage, valuable teachers, firefighters, peace officers, paramedics,
right?
And we have to deal with that.
Well, let me ask you then: who pays? Who pays for this cost? I mean, who pays for the additional, and everything else? Who ends up paying that?
I've told you before that I think that we're ultimately going to be money ahead, but I will say that I'm a realist. I believe that our state needs to have a diversified finance base, a revenue base, and I am for and have introduced legislation for a modest increase in taxes on the oil industry, and I am for and believe that our state needs to have a diversified revenue base, given the long-term decline in oil production and other changes in our state, and also the risks of a crash in the financial markets. Is there risk of crash both in the oil markets and the financial markets, Michael?
Okay, we're 15 seconds from returning to the radio, so we're going to rejoin here, and then we're going to step into that fiscal plan discussion. Cliff Groh is our guest, candidate for House District 18. He's the incumbent in that race. We will continue the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right, we're continuing now. One final segment with Representative Cliff Groh, who is the incumbent in House District 18. We've been talking about defined benefits. We've been talking about education. Cliff, one of the things that you wrote about early on in your campaign, and one of the things you've discussed, is that Alaska's upcoming fiscal crisis requires a long-term plan. And we've talked about this here on the program. I mean, I've looked, for the last 5 years, I've been watching the 10-year forecast go out, and it's deficit on deficit on deficit on deficit as we go forward. The permanent fund at its current rate of consumption by the legislature will probably be gone in the next 36 months at the current rate of spend and the current rate of increase. And eventually we're going to be facing taxes. I think that's almost an inevitability at this point. But you've talked about this fiscal plan, and in your piece back in the ADN back about 3-4 years ago, you talk about an increase in oil taxes, which is part of the fiscal policy working group's plan. You talk about, other revenues in the form of taxation. You talk about a spending cap. You talk about constitutionalizing the PFD. All these things that I think were, again, part and parcel of the fiscal policy working group plan. Yet when the first component of that hit the floor, HJR 7, which would have constitutionalized the PFD, you voted against that. And I kind of want to know why. I mean, that is the first part. I mean, they were trying to get it all out at once, but people keep throwing the single subject rule out there over it, which to me, it is a single subject. It's a fiscal plan. All of these pieces are part of a fiscal plan. But regardless of that, HJR 7 was on the floor and you voted against it. I want to know why.
That was a tough vote for me, but I decided I had to do that because the fiscal policy working group said we had to do this as part of a package. And I was concerned that proposed constitutional amendment did not do the job. It would have led to an unbalanced system, and one that I was concerned about. I think we need to have all those. It's a multi-legged stool. We need to have all those legs on the stool to make this work. I think that we need to have a constitutional amendment that guarantees the permanent dividend. And I put in an amendment. It's got to be at a rate that is sustainable with the overall fiscal system. And that's why I put in an amendment, introduced an amendment, which failed on the House floor, that would have required that the permanent fund dividend be paid based on a formula that was adopted after the adoption of the constitutional amendment, because it was not sustainable. And I helped create the permanent fund dividend and the current formula, but that was in the 1980s, and today that's not sustainable without substantial other changes.
Well, I mean, the HJR 7 basically just said you shall pay it according to the statutory formula, right?
Right.
I mean, so you could have voted for it and then gone back, and they could have brought up the statutory formula to change it to make it more, in your case, sustainable. It would have at least locked it in and guaranteed that there was a payment, and then the discussion would have been on the statutory formula.
I voted repeatedly for the permanent fund dividend, and I'm trying to save it. A lot of people in Alaska, including, in my view, some legislators, want to see the permanent fund dividend go away. I am a big believer that we have to have, as I said, good roads, strong schools, reliable public safety, effective health care, and sustainable and growing permanent fund dividends. That requires all the parts of the proposals set out by the Fiscal Policy Working Group in their report in 2021. It was a bipartisan and bicameral group of legislators, as you know. And I'm a big supporter of that. And it was an unbalanced plan, and it did not guarantee, and I was also concerned in the way the language read, that there would be proposals after you put a guarantee for the dividend according to statutory formula, that the legislature might try to then put in, because the Constitution at that point would not include a definition of what the eligible Alaskan would be. There's substantial pressure in the legislature to make the permanent fund dividend means tested, and to reserve it only for low income people. Something that I, as someone who's probably written more about the philosophy of permanent fund dividends than most of anybody alive, even including Jay Hammond, because I've written about it over time and after it passed, both then and later. We need to have the permanent fund dividend stay universal. And I was concerned that constitutional amendment would not deal with that either, or leave it with that possibility. For all those reasons, I took that tough vote, and which I very much, looking back on it, see as the right thing to do.
Isn't this a chicken and an egg, though, thing? I mean, wouldn't the passage of HJR 7 created a path forward for the rest of the parts, for almost a necessity for the other parts? Because this has been the stumbling block. Like I said, there's been a lot of resistance among legislators in both the House and the Senate for any kind of comprehensive plan that includes all the parts. They keep going back again, that single subject rule, they keep slapping it around. And it seems like it is the ultimate defense against having any fix that would take away money from other things or would restrict the size and scope of government. That's essentially what the Fiscal Policy Working Group said. We need a spending cap. We need to reduce the size of government. We need to reduce some spend. We need to increase oil taxes. We need to create a new revenue stream in some form of tax. I mean, these are all part and parcels, but the ultimate effect over the course of years would be a governing or a restricting of this pathway of spending that we're seeing. Wouldn't the passage of one created the next step? I mean, because I don't see how, with the current legislature we have now, you're going to be able to put together a comprehensive plan with all the parts in one bill. You're going to have to do it one piece at a time.
You mentioned the tighter spending cap. I put forward a tighter spending cap. I introduced a constitutional amendment last year for an effective, workable, and non-destructive, but tighter spending cap. And one that actually works, unlike a lot of the other proposals, and it actually covers all the spending, unlike some of the other proposals which leave out critical elements of spending. And as to the question of the parts, I was concerned, Michael, that we would end up with an unsustainable system that would endanger our ability to have good roads. That would and roads that don't have terrible potholes, like a lot of the roads in my district. And with it, I was concerned we'd end up with a system that would endanger our ability to have strong schools and reliable public safety. And we need to have a comprehensive solution that is workable and is sustainable. And the proposal that ended up being on the floor of the House without my amendment that I offered, that after my amendment failed, it just did not meet that standard. And we need to figure out a way to get all the pieces moving at the same time and make it happen. And I was concerned and remain concerned the passage of one leg of that stool without the rest would lead to the stool falling over and make Alaska a worse place in terms of the effects.
So what?
Yeah.
So I've only got about just over 2.5 minutes here. So in 60 seconds, can you tell me what your plan is to get all the pieces together at once and move forward with it?
We have to have a legislature committed to doing it, and I'm both. I'd be one piece of that, one member, and then I'm working to help others get elected that would have that same approach. But we need to have a tougher, comprehensive spending cap, an increase in revenues, further protections of the permanent fund, and a guarantee of the dividend as the Fiscal Policy Working Group recommended. And the key thing, in my view, is to have a legislature that wants to do that, and a governor, frankly, who won't veto it.
All right,
and I'm
Cliff,
working hard to make that happen.
All right, Cliff Groh, we're down to about the last 90 seconds here, so I want to give you a chance to give us your elevator pitch. How do people find out more about you? Et cetera, et cetera. Go ahead and hit me with it.
Hi, I'm Cliff Groh. I'm running to help save the permanent fund, save the permanent fund dividend, and help Alaskans enjoy and benefit from good roads, strong schools, reliable public safety, effective health care. And I'm found at www.cliffgrow4alaska.com. The 4 is Arabic numeral 4, the number 4. I'd appreciate your support, and people can always call me up if they want, or text me at 907-952-3353. I'm running a hardcore grassroots campaign, going to doors, meeting with people, and I also often have a milkshake and pancake events as well, where I meet with voters. I appreciate this opportunity, Michael.
Well, Cliff, thank you so much for coming on board and joining us. We appreciate it. We don't always agree, but it's good to at least get some conversations going on these things. We need to push forward with some kind of fiscal plan. And I would hope that even if it comes in pieces, we can agree that something needs to be done. Hold the line for a second, Cliff. Folks, up next, Mike Shower is going to be joining us in hour 2, The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. All right, Cliff, I always give candidates final bite at the apple here. We're off the radio, but it's just you, me, and 60 of our closest friends on the internet. So, is there anything we didn't hit on? Any topics that you want to expound on real quick? I'll give you the final couple minutes here, bite at the apple.
Very briefly, I'm want to help Alaskans in general and my constituents. And I also, in addition to all the things I do to work to improve our state generally, I represent the state's largest military base by far, and I'm doing what I can and working hard to help improve the lives of the military members, spouses, dependents, as well as the many veterans that live in my district. Some of the people who live on Jay Bear are obviously veterans, a number of them, and as well as there are a number of veterans that live in the civilian, the parts of my district that are off of Jay Bear. And I'm doing what I can to help them. Michael, I appreciate this opportunity to be on the show with you, and thanks a lot.
Well, and I would like to reserve the right to contact you if you do end up back in the legislature. I would like to
absolutely
contact you, especially on things that are that we may be at odds at. I'd like to get more explanation and more discussion on that. So, well, Cliff, thank you for coming on board. We appreciate you being part of it today, and we'll talk to you again probably after the primary.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming on board. All right. That brings us back to just you and me. All right. Mike Shower is going to be joining us here in a hot second. We're going to get him on board here. and start talking about some of the other discussions. The biggest part of this problem, like I said, is the single subject rule. It was used as a bludgeon. I mean, Ben Carpenter was working, furiously inside Ways and Means to try and put together a comprehensive plan, and then at every route, it seemed like he was blocked from that opportunity, and that's frustrating, especially since the Fiscal Policy Working Group made it very clear that it needed to be done holistically. I was a little worried about that because I knew that this would probably be the case, that they would try and put the whole package together and they would be stymied, and then nobody would then want to do one piece at a time. We have to do one piece at a time. I think it has to be a spending cap first, then a constitutional amendment on the permanent fund, and then the oil taxation, and then cuts to government, and then finally taxes on people. I think that's the only way you're going to get it out there, unless you can get it past this single subject rule. It's going to be a very difficult situation to kind of foresee and get squared away. All right, let me see if we can get Mr. Shower on the line here and make sure everything's working. Look at that. Phone's actually ringing. Okay, good enough. We'll do that. Hello, my friend.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning? Are you bright-eyed and bushy-tailed? Are you feeling good? You rest and relaxed? What's happening?
No, I'm pretty busy. It's a lot going on. Not as much in the state, of course. I mean, lots going on national, but just busy. Like I said, I'm training too, and that's taking a lot of time. So just much going on right now.
Much going on. Much ado about nothing. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
That's right.
Are you girding your loins and getting ready for the next big push here come January?
No, that's pretty far out there. I mean, honestly, until we see, our very expensive thank you ranked voting taxpayer funded poll in August, which will give us a better indication. Until the election in November, we don't know. I think the House looks like it's in pretty good shape, Mike, but the Senate is, of course, a big question mark with some of the players. So, frankly, have all kinds of things that, we would like to work on. You were mentioning some there in the last hour, but until we know who the players are, and then until we see if there's even a chance of organizing with Republican control where we might be able to move some of these with a majority, kind of spinning our wheels. So I'm not spending too much time getting all excited about it, because every time you think we've got it, then, we have the tendency to snatch, defeat from the jaws of victory. So we'll see.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to dive into this here in just a moment, and we'll come back to you. So I'll put you back on hold, and we'll be back to you here in just a minute after the start of the show. Okay.
Roger.
All right. We'll hold the line there. State Senator Mike Shower going to be our guest in hour 2. Let me. Ben Carpenter says in the chat room, HJR 7 proved that bills can be collected on the floor over several days and voted on the same day. That's a solution, instead of trying to omnibus them up into one single bill and have to fight the whole single subject thing, which, again, I really want to see some legal opinions on that, because, again, if the subject is a fiscal plan, that all falls under a single subject of a fiscal plan. I mean, how you can argue that these big turducken bills, like the Senate did, where they mashed the Capitol into the other, they're all budget bills. Well, this is a fiscal policy bill. It has different components, but each component is on a single subject of fiscal policy. I really have a hard time with that one. But again, proving that you could collect them one at a time out of, they could all be passed out of Ways and Means, within a short period of time, all to the floor, all collected on the floor, and then voted on. HJR 7 sat on the floor for almost 30 days. So, I mean, there's no reason why that couldn't, there's no reason why that couldn't happen. I'm going back up here. seeing what some of the comments have been. People are talking about consolidation in the schools. Yes, I think that's an important component that could be looked at, is consolidation of school districts, consolidation of healthcare. Somebody said David Nelson is his opponent, not Chris Nelson, but David Nelson is his opponent. Bradley says, I truly believe that people leave the state for two reasons.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yeah, I gave you a little bit of a sneak peek behind what happens behind the scenes here. We just chat and talk with each other and blow stuff up, mess things up all morning long. Welcome back to Hour 2 of the big radio broadcast. It is the Michael Dukes Show. We are continuing now, just finished up with Cliff Groh, who's candidate for reelection in House District 18. That was in the last segment. You can go back and listen to that on the podcast via Spotify or Castbox or iTunes or Google or wherever you get your podcast. You could also go back and watch it on the replay on Facebook or YouTube as well. Joining us in this hour, though, it's time for the Shower Hour of Power. That's right. We're going to bring on State Senator Mike Shower, who's going to talk with us about the state of the state, the state of the country, a little bit of everything. It's a free form. We're just going to hang out and chat about stuff, and we'll see where things go from here. State Senator Shower joins us right now. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am fine. How was your previous guest? I only heard the end.
It was good. We're going to have to agree to disagree on many of the issues and topics that came about. I think it's telling to know that essentially, when I asked who pays, we immediately went into the discussion on the fiscal policy and the increase in taxes on oil companies and people and everything else. That's the thing. This kind of utopian idea of all government employees should get a golden parachute and everything else. Meanwhile, the private sector is scraping along as best as it can, but struggling because there's a disconnect between the public and the private sector. And there's really no good answer on who pays except for, well, everybody pays for these golden parachute things. And that concerns me. I mean, the idea that somehow a defined benefits plan is going to be, he said he didn't even say it was cost neutral. He said it would save us money in the long run.
I know.
So
I
know. And whether you take the fiscal note that came with the bill, the secondary fiscal note that came out later that said it was going to cost us over $1 billion in 10 years, or the Reason Foundation's discussion where they said by their estimates, and they've been studying a lot of defined benefits plans around the country, it would cost us $10 billion. That's a serious, that's a big swing. 1 billion to 10 billion. Any of those is a bad number when you look at our future revenues and our future forecast for state spending. Any one of those just accelerates that downward trajectory.
Michael, the lies that have been spread by Republicans, much less almost all of the Democrats, and the big unions and the big union leadership about defined benefits is right up there with the lies people have been using against the permanent fund dividend and government spending and flat funding. And we haven't increased the budget, and education funding has never gone up for so many, for decades. That the lies are so strong. And yet when you have a press that refuses to report on those facts and just basically mostly talks about what's spoon fed to them, whether it's state level or national level, is amazing. the misinformation, the fake news. I mean, it is just, you look at them and you have a Republican from the Kenai stand up going, this is going to be cost neutral. What? How can you stand on the floor and say that when right here, even the fiscal notes you have says it's going to cost money, right? Of some amount. So only 70 million or 100 million a year, whatever. Could be, right? Always could be. Always best case scenario. Always like, oh, to lay cable across the entire state of Alaska is only going to cost about $1 billion. Try again. It's probably going to be 5 billion or 8 billion or 10. I mean, any government program, like when they say, it's going to be done in 16 months and it's going to only cost us $100 million. Call it 5 years instead and $5 billion. I mean, that's the way it works. Anybody with a sense of history, anybody that looks at how government works, it almost never saves us money because it costs money to do things. And it's OPM, it's other people's money. It is so easy to spend it because it is not yours. And you're not seeing the direct cost to your wallet. Or if you're a business owner, you're not seeing the direct cost of taxes. I mean, it's just funny to listen to this, Michael. I mean, Cliff Groh is no fan of the fiscal policy working group other than the tax portion. He's lined up, ducks in a row with the Democrats and all the stuff they want to do, DEI and, defund the police and every good Democrat utopian dream. He's a part of it because he caucuses with them and votes with them. So, it's funny. I know you said, agree to disagree. I mean, I know there's not a lot of, overlap there on ideas and ideology, but goodness gracious. I mean, what they just want to tax. That's it. So they can pay for, their constituency, the government employees, so they can pay for more government. Michael, I mean, look at it. Come on, man.
Well,
Let's get real here.
Everything that we discussed in the last segment, in all fairness, is going to cost more money. Everything that he said, whether we talked about the education component, defined benefits. I mean, I respectfully disagree with his idea that, and I think he kind of backpedaled a little bit when he said, well, because of the cost of employees, we're going to save some money there. I think he said it might be a cost savings. Well, but is it a cost savings? Well, here's my question. Is it a cost savings on just the training and recruitment and training of employees? Sure. If they're locked in and they can't leave because their defined benefits requires them basically to stay because it's non-transferable, then yeah, maybe you save a little money there, but what's the actual cost of the benefit beyond that? Sure, we'll save some money in recruitment and retention, but what's the actual cost down the road of the defined benefit? And that's always the problem. I mean, again, all I do is I look at every other municipality, government entity, organization, corporation that has axed defined benefits, and it's because of the unpredictability of the model, and there's no way to predict in a 20-year cycle what things may cost. And of course, everybody wants to shortchange the payments into the system because, that's down the road. We'll do it later. And they use the money for something else, or the actuarial screw up like it did here in the state of Alaska, or something explodes like healthcare costs. You just have no idea. And you're basically enshrining it in the Constitution with these contracts, with these ideas, and it puts the permanent fund itself at risk because that is the pot of money that some federal judge will eventually go, well, you owe the money and you do have this, $80 billion sitting here. So you might as well just pay it out. And that's the problem. That is a real problem, in my opinion.
Michael, I go back to the base, right? You have, not you, but we, including our government, our elected officials, the people, by allowing it, by sending the same people back over and over, at least the ones that are really going after this, and new ones that essentially do the same thing, right? Always they promise change and then go there and do the same thing. We are eating away at that seed corn I've heard somebody talk about on the Senate floor often. Oh, we don't want to get our seed corn. Well, I got news for you. Because Walker, the previous governor, tapped the dividend and said, that's not untouchable. It's not sacrosanct.
Right. Well, he started
You can
counting
take
it.
the
He
dividend.
started counting it
It-
as government revenue instead of a pass through, which it had been
Correct.
for 30 years. It was a simple transfer, never hit the books as revenue, never hit the books as an expenditure. It was a simple transfer to the people. He started accounting for it differently. All of a sudden, oh, that's revenue. We got to get our hands on that.
In our court system, our judges said that was fine. You don't have to follow the law. Essentially, the judicial system that has no problems. That's perfect. That the people in the judicial system are above reproach. Sarcasm sick if you've been noticing stuff with the judiciary lately, but we won't go there today. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, because justice, not politics, tells us they're perfect. There's nothing wrong with them at all, right? So hey, but let's just stop that one, because we'll get we'll be diving really far down Alice's rabbit hole on that one. But they said they could. And so here's my point, Michael. When you look at the baseline, we still have some money. We still have some room left to wiggle. We still have a chance to enact a fiscal policy, to put in a spending cap, to hold the line, if you will. But the way we are going, because it is a spending frenzy, and this is the point that so many people miss, is that we have been taking more and more of the dividend, the earnings from the fund. And yes, I know we're POMV now versus earnings, et cetera. I get all that. But we're taking more of that every year and growing government. And that was one of the biggest things that nobody would talk about, because we just want the dividend, we follow the law. That's all great. But that acted as a quasi spending cap, because we couldn't get our hands on it. It was, boy, they're people, they had money, dollar signs in their eyes, Michael, and they wanted that fund. Well, now they got it. And now we've been able to spend this. So let's spend $40 million a year on the bag bill. Let's spend who knows how much, hundreds of millions on defined benefit. Let's increase the BSA $400 million a year. And the next thing, and we've been doing that, right? A little at a time. See, it's not as noticeable when you do a little bit this year and a little bit next year and a little bit a couple of years ago. And the next thing you go, well, how come the dividend's only $1,700? It should be 34. Because the rest of that has been eaten up by the growth of government. A little here, a little there. And the next thing you know, we're going to wake up in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, not long. We're going to wake up and it's all going to be used. And then that's when I look at Cliff Groh and all the rest of them, and I go, what are you going to do now? You just mentioned it, Michael. You got a private sector that's completely forgotten about in Juneau. We don't think about it. We don't talk about it. We don't try to protect it. We don't try to entice it. We ignore it for the public sector, for government. And when we reach that point of zero and there's nothing left, what do you think happens next? We have an anemic, tiny workforce of people that can pay taxes for a per capita largest government in the nation. All of a sudden, you've locked yourself into contract increases, union increases. All of this stuff's going to hit us. And there's nowhere else to turn for money besides one of two things, right? You said it. Either take money from the actual permanent fund itself, in which case that's a self-defeating, that thing's, we're just going to spiral down from there. Or you tax. And who and what are you going to tax? The big industry, some of them, and a lot of the Democrats hate it, right? They hate oil. That's the one that's paid the bills. And how are you going to tax enough in a workforce the size that we have for the size of this government, Michael? So that's what I'm looking at everybody going, do you not understand? The day of reckoning is coming. We're going to have cuts to spending, Michael, because we're going to have no choice. We're not going to be able to fund it. So let's do something now. Ben Carpenter's not wrong. We could collect all the bills and do it that way. But you have people individually, like Cliff Groh, that just want the taxes. They don't want a spending cap. You have old guard Republicans that are, I don't want it. We don't need no spending cap. Well, then if you can't get a spending cap, you're not going to get the taxes. If you can't get the taxes and the spending cap, you're not going to get that. That's how it will go, and it will unravel. So it's a difficult problem, but I'm here to tell you, Michael, you could almost sit back and just watch from this perspective, because this is coming, whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not. We're going to be forced to act at some point, because the math will no longer add up here in a couple of years.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
You can't fight arithmetic is essentially what's happening. And that's what I've been saying to the
Sure.
listeners and folks here, is that we must start talking about this in some form or another, because otherwise what'll happen is it will be an inflection point, a crisis point, and then we will end up with the worst possible option on the table because it's a crisis and we have to do something now. If we don't talk about what the options are now and get a handle on it and at least have some say in it, we'll end up with some form of progressive income tax, some kind of crazy thing that will just convolute it and make it worse than ever. We have to start talking about these things because the reality is we can't control the spending in the legislature, period. And it's going to continue.
And Michael, when the average income in this state is $77,000 a year, and most people can't survive as it is based on the inflation numbers we're seeing and an anemic economy, how in the world are you going to have a progressive income tax? Who's going to be able to afford to pay it and live here? You're going to watch a mass exodus like you're seeing out of California because of the stupidity of government and liberal ideas that are destroying that state. You watch that happen in Alaska, Michael, it will unravel quickly. Nobody's going to be able to afford it. Just to go to the grocery store. How many times have we talked about that in the last couple of years?
Yeah.
You go there and you spend $300 or $400. It's not even a full cart.
Well,
and you've got a family of four. How are you going to get by?
Yeah, no, it's a difficult situation. And we've got to face up to it. And I hope that we do it sooner rather than later. State Senator Mike Shower is our guest, Senator for District O. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more right after these messages.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Somebody sent me a reel or a short or a Facebook, TikTok, something. Anyway, of a young man who was talking about he buys his groceries. He does his ordering through Walmart, right? And so he said he was just going back through his orders, and he'd been scrolling back, and he looked back, and he said he placed an order in 2021 on this app, and he had a screenshot of it. And he said, "Look, there's 44 items in this, or 43 items in this order," and he said it was the food that I purchased for 1 month. And he said, okay. So he said, I'll just, there was a button there that just said reorder. So he did. And he said in a 3-year period, the first order was for the same 43 items was $146. And he hit reorder and it was $412 for the same 43 items that he purchased 3 years ago. Yeah. The inflation is real, man. I mean, there is some, and it's not on everything. It's not, but when you consolidate it and you look at something like that, you go, the cost has gone up 2, 3, maybe 4 times. It makes it tougher, especially up here where everything's got some kind of freight charge attached to it.
Well, I mean, you look, Michael, they try to snow job most Americans by telling them, oh, CPI, inflation it's really only, it's 3.1%. It's 3.6. It's this, it's that. Bogus numbers, right? Because they don't include the things that affect us on a daily basis. One of those being gasoline, the cost of natural gas for heating your home, the cost of electricity. But of course, the big one, we all got to eat, right? And you can mitigate those other things somewhat, but you can't mitigate what you got to feed your family. And that just has to happen. And those numbers have been significant over the last 4 years. We've seen 18%, 24%, 25% on things like milk and eggs and the staples, right? The things you have to survive that you really can't mitigate very much. And so when you add those kind of numbers on the lower 48, the national scale, and then imagine what those are in Alaska when you add the cost that it was already high. And remember, you always see those Burger King, McDonald's commercials back when we actually had TV. And at the bottom, there was always that little thing, it's like, $5 foot long at Subways, except Hawaii and Alaska. It always had AK and HI at the bottom, as an exception because of shipping and the cost involved. So add those inflationary numbers that are real numbers to what Alaskans have to deal with on top of that, it's even worse. I go back to the point of we're not going to be able to afford this. That day of reckoning is coming. So it's, yeah, it's just, I told you about it. And when Michelle and I went in Juneau, we got there last year, and it was the first cart of groceries kind of, to get your little place to live in, to get started. It was one cart, $700 and something. One cart. I'm like, Michael, that's not much more than what I used to pay per month for my mortgage for our little house in Eagle River years ago. For a house.
No. I mean, when I told people, I said, my son moved out, my oldest son moved out, and I said, man, my grocery bill went down about $500 a month. And they're like, what is your grocery bill? I said, well, our grocery bill is about $2,000 a month in groceries because I got 4 kids at home, and my wife and I, the 6 people, it's about $2,000 a month. And when he left, it dropped by about 500. And then, of course, the first thing he did, he'd come back and he goes, my God, food is so expensive. I'm like, welcome to the party, pal.
Welcome to the party, bro.
You're figuring it out right there. I mean, it is a huge expense. I mean, all these things, I mean, when they keep going back to the people and saying, well, you need to pay more. Free rides die hard. We don't have a tax, so buckle up, buttercup, here it comes. It's going to be,
and who benefits from that tax, Michael? Does every Alaskan benefit from those great services they all get every day from the government? No, right? Because that's always we got to have those essential services. You just have to have it. Well, who benefits from that?
Yeah.
Because I certainly don't use a lot of state services, almost never.
Mike Shower is our guest. We're going to continue here. I think, Mike, I do want to touch briefly on the Trump shooting and just kind of your thoughts on politics in the country overall. It's not our normal jam, but I figured since you here, we should chat in on it and go from there. We're going to be back. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
We're continuing. State Senator Mike Shower, our guest. When I was just coming back from break, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Trump shooting and kind of what's going on there and some of the things that have been said. Several prominent people have lost their jobs over this last week after making some crazy. Look, if somebody had shot Joe Biden, I wouldn't have said, or shot at Joe Biden, I would not have said, damn, they missed. They should have. I mean, I may disagree with a guy, but I definitely do not want anyone to be killed in this situation. But there are some people out there that just lost their damn minds. And it kind of shows, I think, and highlights the polarization and the anger that this country is facing right now. Mike, what do you think of the ramifications of this? And it may be to Alaska, but I mean, overall, what do you think of the ramifications of this as we move forward? And what does it say about American politics in general? Give me your thoughts here.
So let's start with the hopeful side of things, right? Because I was going to talk about this because I think it's important. You have 2 presidential options in front of us, right? One of them is now on 60 executive orders trying to shut down the state of Alaska to appease his far left extremist environmentalist and the others, to turn Alaska into a national park. Has some of the highest reserves of everything this nation needs for energy security, for material security, for geopolitical stability with our allies and others. And yet Biden has literally basically slammed Alaska down. I listened to a Patola ad yesterday about how much she's done and how she helped open the largest oil thing. Patola has voted with Biden and the Democrats nearly 100% of the time, who have shut down Alaska. It's such a lie to listen to people like her trying to spin, oh, I've done all of this great stuff. You haven't done anything. And then they say things like, oh, and I authored legislation. That's like the consummate politician that says, I filed a bill, and everybody goes, yay, you did a good job. You filed a bill. Did the bill get heard? Did it go through all the committees? Did it make it through your body? Did it go to the other body? Did it make it all the way through that body? Did it come back to your body and get approved and sent to the president or the governor to be signed? That's something. Saying I authored a bill is like saying, well, I woke up this morning. Yay. Did you do anything today? It just the amount, Michael, is amazing to me. To listen to people that will then buy that and go, oh, Patola's doing some great work up there. She hasn't done anything. But you can spin it, right? And so that's my point. We have two choices in front of us. And like you, I have no desire to see anybody hurt. I think we forget Melania Trump did a good job with her letter. People seem to forget that Trump and Biden both are just men. They're just human beings. They have families. They have kids and grandkids that love them. They love their families, right? They're people just like us, Michael. Would somebody be happy if you woke up tomorrow and your neighbor got shot? You'd be like, oh, that's just tragedy. It's terrible. Then why is it okay when it's a national figure that you don't like or disagree with to say, well, boy, I wish they'd had better aim. I wish I'd have seen, they should have got better optics. They should have got training. Yeah, I've seen all the comments too, hundreds of them. And I'm sure there's thousands and hundreds of thousands across the nation, probably because of the TDS out there, the Trump derangers. You hate somebody you've never met. You hate somebody because they're different on the other side of the political aisle, Mike. I'm looking at this and going, this is not us as a nation. That's why I've been very quiet. I haven't said anything. I haven't gone on Facebook or social media. I've been relatively quiet about it because I feel like as a nation, we're standing on a ledge and one foot's on the ledge and one foot is hanging out over the abyss. And I'm wondering, are we going to leap? Are we going to leap into that abyss? Is this really what America's come to? I don't like you, so I hope that you die. I hope that you get shot. I hope that, what was that comedian held up a severed head of Trump and, oh, it's just art. No,
Right.
it's not. It's disgusting.
Right.
It's vitriolic. It's hatred. And you've sat here for years. The left they have just vilified Trump. He's Hitler. He's a fascist. He's a threat to democracy. Biden last week put a bullseye on him. And now you want to call for unity? You guys did this in a nation of 1/3 of a billion people. When you do that to somebody relentlessly in the press and in the media and say it over and over, people like this young kid, clearly probably mentally disturbed, it seems like anyways, they're going to act on this. And so they have truly, in a sense, blood in their hands because it wasn't just Trump. Another human being, a father, a husband, was killed in that shooting by that guy. And 2 more were injured, seriously, and all the trauma that goes with that. So, Michael, this is the result of the vitriol and the rhetoric and the hatred. And I'm not going to say it's all on the left because it's not, although they seem to be the most vitriolic.
Hey, wait, did you watch the presidential debate? I mean, come on, there's a lot of hate going back and meanness and strife going back and forth on both sides. Yeah,
that's why I'm not just pointing a finger at one side. I'm saying, but if you want to say specifically Trump, well, yeah, they vilified the guy, Michael. They've turned him into a Hitler, an evil devil. And so, yes, people will act on that. But like you said, that's why I'm relatively quiet, because there's plenty of fingers to be pointed in every direction. It's back to my question of, are we a nation standing on the ledge, ready to just jump into the abyss? Is that really who we are? Is that what America stands for? Hating each other when we've got bigger problems? A debt that we can't sustain, an economy that we need to be smoking for our people to work. Countries like Russia and China that would love to see us fall flat in our face so they could take over the world. I mean, really, Michael, this is the issues that we're facing, and that's where we are today as a nation. We have to do better than this. This is not who we are. It's not. And Americans need to stand united. And I'm hoping Trump tomorrow will take this tact in his speech at the RNC convention and go and use this as opposed to a dividing moment. Use it as a uniting moment. Use it as a healing moment to go, folks, this has got to stop. We can't. I mean, Biden and his cronies, and they're already back at it again, unfortunately. And attacking Vance and whatever. And look, politics, that's fine. That's fair game in the realm of ideas. We should be in the ring, metaphorically duking it out with our gloves on over who's got the better ideas, who's best for the country, who's going to be best for the people in the economy. We should. That's how it works. That's how a republic, because we're not a democracy, right? That's how a republic is supposed to work, Mike. Law and order. Have a system. You have debate. You have ideas. We put the best people forward, we hope, and so be it, right? But we are fortunate, in my opinion. I was relieved when I saw him get up and put his fist up in there. I said, we would be having a very different conversation right now in this nation, Michael, had Trump been assassinated. And I feared that would not be a very good conversation, because I think a lot of people on the right would think it's over. That's it. Deep State won, fights on. That's what I think would happen. A lot of people would be willing to take up arms and think, It was Bill Maher. I saw a thing he said, a month or two ago, and he said he finally understood it. He was talking to a conservative friend. He's talking, "Hey, Trump, hey, people all try, I hate Trump." He's like, "You don't get it." He's like, "Not everybody that's a conservative or Republican, et cetera, on the center to the right side of the political aisle likes where we are today as a nation, as who our candidates are.
Right.
But we see Trump as a bulwark to all your freaking craziness on the left." And Bill Maher said it was a eureka moment. He's like, "I get it now." He's like, "They're not particularly happy because, Bill Maher's not happy with Biden." It's like, we're not necessarily happy where we are. But we see Trump as the only thing standing between us and your stupidity, your craziness on the left. And he's like, it was like I said, it was that eureka moment. He goes, "I get it. You got somebody that's pumping his fist in the air and fighting for you." That's what you see. And who's standing against the DC swamp and all the craziness going on. And I think a lot of Americans, that's what they feel, Michael, when it comes to Trump. Somebody that's actually going to fight for us. I mean, look, let's be honest. That was an iconic moment. And we are fortunate that that guy grazed his ear. And maybe we can use this as a healing and uniting moment. But had he actually assassinated Trump, I don't know where this would have gone. We would be nowhere good. Right. So,
Yeah, no.
Fortunately, we're having a conversation that I turn back to the hopeful side. Hopefully, Trump will use it as an actual uniting moment. Hopefully, some Americans will step back off the ledge and go, "We're better than this. And let's use this to move forward in a positive way." And for Alaska, let's be honest, Michael, when it comes to people like Potola, we don't have a choice. It's got to be one of the two Republicans running to win and go back, because she's aligned with the Democrats and they seem to hate the state and want to destroy it in the sense of no resource development, no economy. Biden has just shut us down. There is only one option if you are an Alaskan, and that is to vote for Trump, because Trump loves Alaska. He wants to open us up for business. I've talked directly to the governor, who promises me he will tell Trump that we are asking him to undo every single Biden executive order on day one. Don't wait. Turn Alaska loose. Turn us into the Texas of the North, a booming economy for resource development that our nation and our allies need. And let's get moving. Michael, we should be booming in this state. And President Trump is one that will help us do that. I have no doubt of that. The other guy is going to shut us down. Whoever they put in the left side is going to shut us down. Ain't going to matter.
Well,
Kamala Harris, Newsom, you name it, they'll shut us down.
Well, and the worst part is that if Trump does get elected and he does reverse all those executive orders within the first day or week or whatever, now we've got a legislature that is, the Democrats have already come out and said they want to see an end to petroleum production. I mean, they said that during their convention in Juneau here a month ago or whatever. And so
anti-oil.
Yeah. So we got to fight in our own legislature to develop our, whether or not we should develop our own resources, whether we should, keep the size and scope of government small. Developing the resources is great, except for the fact that it then opens the floodgates for more money for government, which in case just wants to spend it. I mean,
it's always a double-edged sword, Michael.
It is.
I get you. I feel you, man. But at the same time, to go, well, let's just not worry about it. Let's just run into that brick wall in a couple of years and run out of money. I'm not willing to go there either. I would rather have coffers that have more money and opportunity for people to grow this state via resource development, all the downstream things that happen. And that is in my mind, is a much better problem to have than going, well, bye guys, watch everybody pack up their U-Hauls and head down south to Texas and Florida and Tennessee. I would rather have more money in the coffers because the economy is booming and all the positives that brings and deal with that than the other scenario. And that other scenario is the one we're headed on right now. So I hear you. I almost mentioned it. I didn't know if you were going to say anything. I'm like, yeah, I know. Booming economy means taxes to spend. I get it. But then maybe have the opportunity to put the pieces of a fiscal policy together that would actually balance the budget, and we could constrain government. I know. With the people in Juneau, I get it. That's not a bad joke, but at least it gives us options, Michael. Booming our economy would give us room to maneuver. It would grow the amount of money available over time that would at least take the pressure off. I mean, I don't know, Michael. There's for every good answer, there's somebody out there that, well, yeah, but what about? I'm like, I know, I get it.
Yeah.
But I mean, would you rather be in that case in 4 years and have an economy that's growing and stronger and people employed and we're getting, some good results? Or would you rather be, like I said, renting a U-Haul in 3 years?
No,
because there's no economy left.
I agree. I agree with you there. I mean, I understand totally, and I agree with you there. But it's well, it's definitely the frustration factor is definitely very high on that. All right,
It
let's. We're up against the break, so let's continue that here in just a moment. Mike Shower is our guest. We're going to continue with him. What are we going to talk about next? I have no idea. We're throw it to the wind. We'll see what's coming up. State Senator Mike Shower continues the Shower Hour of Power. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after these messages. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, by the way, as well.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, in the break right now, let's see what I did. I saved a couple questions here. Kyle asked, why is inflation so important to individuals but not to education funding? I don't think we ever said that it wasn't important to education funding. But that's all.
Who said that? Who said that?
Yeah, I don't.
Kyle?
I don't think we ever said that.
Don't put words in our mouth. We never said. No, I haven't heard anybody say that.
Yeah,
ever.
And part of the funding is always based around the cost of. It's always increasing. I mean, it's always increasing, even with a declining enrollment. So I don't.
Inflation proofing, Michael, has been part of what's we're paying extra to education this entire time. When they say flat funding, baloney.
Yeah,
they've been getting inflation proofing this entire time, almost exclusively. We've talked about it on the Senate floor. They will lie to you. They will hide that fact. The union certainly won't talk about it, but they have been getting more money. And by the way, we have been one-time funding them every year anyways, outside of the BSA. The other little lie that they don't tell you.
Oh, yeah.
So don't talk about, no, inflation is not.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever said that. And we've been funding it exclusively every year since I've been there. So stop. That's more spreading misinformation. Garbage.
5 of the last 7 years, the BSA has had between $10 and $50 million placed on top of it in 5 of the last 7 years.
$175 million this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I think that's a non-starter. Nobody said that nobody said inflation was not important for everything. We were just talking specifically about consumer inflation at that point. Rick asks, Mike, I don't know. This is a deep hole. Mike, your thoughts on the CIA?
Yeah, that's a deep hole. He's probably referring to Trump, right? And the assassination attempt.
I guess. I don't know what he's talking about, but it's a question. I have a lot more questions about the CIA than I did 5 years ago, personally. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, Michael, look, I can tell you this. The deep state was most certainly involved, and were elements of the CIA, FBI, Homeland, others, and the State Department. Were they involved in the Russia collusion? Yes, they were. We already know that. Were officers, and I'm talking, from appointed ones at the highest level on down, involved in doing things with that dossier? Yes, they were. Did they sign letters saying misinformation and stuff and Trump? And that? Yes, they did. So has the CIA and FBI and other federal agencies been involved in a lot of stuff they shouldn't have been? Seems to be no question of that. How far and how deep, I don't know. And look, I will tell you right now, on average, in my opinion, most of the mid-level, the agents, the gun carriers, the ones out there doing the mission, I think most of those are pretty good people trying to do a good job, and they believe in what they're doing. Most of my angst is directed towards the political leadership. And you have to remember, most of these people are political appointees. These are not career agents, career others that have put their life in line. Most of these people running these agencies, Michael, Secret Service comes to mind in the last 5 or 6 days. Pepsi company. That's not an agent that you've worked your way up the Secret Service that knows how this works and what. That's somebody that worked for protecting Coke. Pepsi cans. I mean, I'm being a bit facetious, but these political appointees, Michael, favors people that gave them money, people that get to be in the circle, the orbit of power for a while. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions there about that, and I have a lot of questions about what happened for Trump, and I'm not saying conspiracy. I mean, just looking at it, if you excluded any conspiracy, and I've heard all kinds of them in the last few days, just the incompetence of what happened during this is
astonishing.
Staggering, by itself.
Yeah, just
how this got to this point. So
Yeah.
yeah, I got a lot of questions, and they're not necessarily conspiracy related, but I'm also not going to sit back and just excuse and go, "Oh, yeah, the federal government was fine."
Right.
They're not. I don't know what they've done. I know that they've done plenty of things they shouldn't be doing. We're all over the world with the CIA doing some stuff we shouldn't be doing, and others. And
Yeah.
the FBI is breaking down doors for people in Homer that clearly was probably unconstitutional and wrong. And while America is burning, they're not arresting BLM and Antifa operatives, but they're certainly going
Right.
after Americans with flag shirts on and MAGA hats because they walked into the Capitol
Right.
one day, one time, and burned nothing to the ground and killed no one. But hundreds of people were killed and injured, and entire city blocks are burned to the ground by those other groups. And mostly peaceful protests.
No, it definitely.
So yeah, we got problems.
It raises more questions than it does answers. We're less than 60 seconds out, so you may want to take this one into the next segment. But Kyle also asked, how does Dozer pay for his statutory dividend? Where does the $800 million come from? And so if you want to take that...
well, perhaps the earning reserves account that is much higher than they said it was. I think, they said, oh, we're about out of money. And it was, what they say, 2.7. I think we looked at it. The rest just gave me numbers. It's a 7.2 billion. Oh, they were only off by about 4 to 5 billion or so. So yeah, and maybe we go back to what we used to do. Maybe it's a pass-through fund. Maybe we don't touch it. Maybe we pass a fiscal policy with 50-50, and then it does what it used to do, where that was just what happened. That money got transferred, and then we figure out how to spend it and who we're going to tax. And then I got to go to you, Kyle, and go, hey, I got to go after more money from you. Are you okay with that?
That's
a harder conversation.
Hold the line.
You started it.
Good God almighty. All right, hold the line. We're going to be back to you here. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like and share, subscribe, ring the bell. All the YouTube and Facebook things. Do it now. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right. Continuing now. Mike Shower is our guest. State Senator for District O. I just said, we'll talk about whatever we want to talk about here coming into this. So, Mike, what's been on your mind? What's the hot button thing you've been thinking about? I mean, we've talked about a lot already this hour, but what's on your mind?
Well, first question, because you said we would take this into the segment here because we had that question from Kyle. Kyle, if he doesn't like the dividend or thinks it needs to be spent on government because it sounds that way, he doesn't have to apply for dividend.
Right. Well, just for clarification,
back to the government.
Just for clarification, the question that Kyle asked, that I asked during the break, was how does Mike Shower intend to pay for the statutory dividend that he supports? Where does the $800 million come from?
It comes from the earnings reserve account, like it was set up to come from. It comes from that because that's what that money was dedicated to. It was not dedicated to government spending. And going to the people is not government spending. It never was. It was a governor that wanted to use that money for government, and a Supreme Court, Alaska judicial system, a bunch of judges that said it was fine if we did that. Instead of forcing your elected officials to have a hard conversation with their constituents, the taxpayers, and tell them that they were going to have to enact a tax or taxes, because it'd be a lot more than one. Business taxes, oil taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, you name it. Instead of having to have that conversation, we took the easy path. We just took money from the dividend. The court said we could do it. And now we are allowed to grow government. I would ask the same question to Kyle. Where are you going to get the money from, Kyle, once we run out? Because the dividend's pretty much gone. It really is. We're just a few years. That's where we're headed right now. And will Kyle and others be okay with watching all of that money be spent that would have gone to the private sector and private businesses and private individuals, right? Because that's where the money goes, will go to government. And then you're going to be taxed on top of that. So was it a wise move? Was it smart for us to go down that path of allowing the government to eat up every single dollar it can get its hands on, and then it's still going to want more because its appetite is insatiable? That's where we're going. It's the same thing with education funding, Michael. We could have given them, instead of 175, they wanted the bigger BSA, 400 million. You know what they're going to tell us in 2 or 3, 4 years down the road? It's not enough. We need more. It will never be enough. And if your economy is booming, at least you can afford it in one sense of the word. But when you are not, and your economy is actually going the wrong direction, that day of reckoning is coming. So unfortunately, one of the biggest disagreements I have with people like that believe that they seem to believe that money should all go to government. You have now set us on a path that's going to guarantee we are going to run out of money to spend and force us to take even more from either the seed corn, which is a self-defeating thing down the road as well, or we're going to take more money from the private sector, which is also self-defeating. All of that's going to lead us to a place that's not good. You know it, I know it, he knows it, everybody knows it. And so, we've said for years, those people don't like dividend money. They don't have to file for it, right? Or they could get the dividend, turn around, write a check, and give it back to the government. Put it back in the general fund. That could be millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions if people actually put their money where their mouth is.
Right.
So, you can say what you want about, where you're going to get the money from. Your answer to that, Kyle, here in a couple of years, I don't know where we're going to get the money from.
Right.
Because there's not going to be enough.
Well, and what you're saying is, and because Kyle follows up here, and what you're saying is so take the 50-50, 50 to government, 50 to the dividend, and cut the 800. No, you're saying, how do we pay for the rest of the 800? That's government spend. Stop treating the PFD like it's a piggy bank. That's the answer. And whether that's cutting the 800 or finding another way to pay for it through taxation or something else, at least give people a valid say in what needs to be happening there.
Well, that's the problem. It's become there's no cap on spending, Michael. And at the end of the day, the amount of money available from the fund was capped because you had to put it in the dividend, and at least it went to the private sector and helped. And the government couldn't get his hands on the money. Now we've gone the exact opposite direction. We're taking ever more money from the private sector, and there's no cap on spending. So where do you think this goes? At the end of the day, not to a good destination. Some of us, like Ben Carpenter, myself, and others, are trying very hard to move pieces of a plan that would help lock this down so we would have a sustainable, stable, and predictable path forward. But we have legislator after legislator that blocks us in every one. You had one in the last segment. He's not for a comprehensive fiscal policy, Michael. If we don't do it now, those days are coming. And guess what? Like I said, it's going to be done for us. It's going to be done for us by a judge, like you said, going after the money in the actual permanent fund corpus, which you know where that goes eventually. Or we're going to be looking at people and businesses and going, hey, we're going to have to tax you. And I think you're going to see an exodus out of this state. I think you're going to look at businesses and go, well, look, we're struggling for gas. I've been talking to some of the leaders in the energy industry right now, and they're like, we don't have a choice right now. We're going to have to import. We don't have a gas line. Hillcorp wants to make money. It's a private company, right? Well, when they want to make money, that's how they survive. They're not charities. And they want to be up on the slope developing stuff. So you're not making enough money off the cook inlet gas. So we are to a point that we are so poorly planning. We have so little strategic vision that we are going to be lacking for energy in a state that is so rich with resources, one of the most richest spots on the planet. And we're going to import natural gas to heat our homes and produce our electricity. Can't build a new coal plant, can't build a power plant, can't build a dam for electricity. We can't do these things for a host of reasons, but we've talked about that, so much on the show. I won't dive down that rabbit hole, but boy, I got to tell you, Mike, step one, thank goodness Trump was missed, right? Turned your head at the last half of a second and the bullet grazed your ear. Otherwise he'd be dead and we'd have a different conversation. Trump gets elected because it looks like he's in a pretty clear path at the moment. He will hopefully allow Alaska to develop, and boom, resources.
Right.
And now we have some options. And hopefully we will elect some common sense legislators to go, okay, we got a chance. We got time now. Let's put a plan in place. Let's make this stable. Let's save for the future.
Yeah, let me break this down for just a second, because Kyle's focusing on the $800 million for a full statutory
I don't
PFD.
care.
Well,
Whatever,
no, just let
whatever.
me paint the picture here. So $800 million is what's been kept from us a year, essentially, which means because we're receiving we're receiving about a quarter or a third of the dividend right now is what we're actually receiving. So let's just say, okay, so the difference made up there is what, $350 million is actually being dispersed, $400 million maybe on the outside. So
the number I want to say this year is somewhere the 880, maybe 900, 880, something like that was the actual dividend amount.
Was the actual,
I think the total
for the actual 880 million.
Yeah, Yeah, 'cause it's like 600 million and change, 650 for about $1,000. So we were at 1,700 with the energy thing. So, if you all told, it was probably closer to $1 billion.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact numbers.
So let's say it's $750 million. Just split the difference between 600 and $1 billion, and we'll just say $750 million. Based on the projections right now, and the average increase, that increase, by the way, is going up. The formulaic increase in government, over $200 million a year, plus what the governor's 10-year forecast says. We're in deficits starting in 2026, and it just gets worse from there. So again, $1 billion, $750 million gets sucked up in 3 years, 36 months.
But Michael, remember what people like who we're talking about here. I'm not going to let one person drive this conversation or the narrative, but that's before things like the 40 million a year we just committed to with the bag bill, right? That's before 175 million a year or 300 million a year or 400 million a year for education. That's before Senator Giesel's
I'm
Senate
talking
Bill
about
88 with another 100 million a year. That the average contract increases were between 100 to 150 million every year before we did anything else.
Right. I'm talking best case scenario. We're talking 36 months. We consume an additional. Yeah. Well, I'm just saying we're consuming an additional $750 million in 3 years. Easily,
That's right.
think is what you're saying. Easily. So yes, in 3 years, there will be no
gone.
PFD. So then what do you do?
That's my point. Then you're going to have only one option, Mike. Well, you have two, right? You're going to take the money from the permanent fund corpus to then start drawing that down, which means you get less every year. And you know where that goes eventually. That will kick the can down the road, but it's going to get worse as well. Or you tax the private sector, the individuals, the citizens, and the businesses. And you know where that goes. That's not going to help in a state where we're barely surviving. Or you have to cut all of that wonderful government that we all love so much, right? Because those are going to be your options, Michael. There isn't going to be anything else. There's no more room to maneuver.
1 minute.
Unless we have that option of an economy that's booming, like talk about, we could maybe, expand our options a little bit. But right now, if we muddle along just like we are, in just a few short years, as we have been saying for years now on this program and sounding the clarion call and trying to get people to understand that's where this goes. There is no other option on these paths in front of us, Michael. This is where it takes us, right? There's a finite amount, I should say, of resources available. And we are starting to run into that wall. So when you want to spend more on education, whoever it is, you want to spend more on this and you don't, that's where it takes us. And there is only so much available. And the government is sucking it dry right now, Michael. It is doing, and there are politicians I'm looking at, I'm going, who are you trying to pay back? The union for helping you get elected? Why are you doing this? None of these things pencil out. They don't make sense. The defined benefits is ridiculous to go back to it. But I know we're running out of time, but it's not going to work.
No, it won't work. And I think it's wishful thinking at best. It's fallacious at worst to say, oh, it's just going to be cost neutral or it's going to save us money.
No,
I think that's pie in the sky, and they'll say anything to get it passed because once it's in, baby, and you're done. All right, Mike Shower, our guest. Thank you so much for coming on board. Tomorrow, folks, we're going to be dealing with Lee Ellis and Elise Galvin. Oh, that should be fun. That'll be tomorrow's show. And then Chris Chang on Friday. The Michael Duke Show. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Okay. I love getting you spun up and then watching you hit the top of the hour break. So, look, all I was trying to say was, Mike, is in the rosiest scenario, it's 36 months for us to expend an additional $750 million. That's the actual rosiest scenario out there. So
yeah, and that's what I'm trying to tell you is based on where the legislature seems to be headed, it's going to be less. It's worse than that. And I hear you, and I agree with you. There's a way to something to talk about that thing. But look, this is the best case scenario, and here's the worst case scenario. We're probably somewhere in the middle of that. But based on I'm watching the temperature of the water in the legislature. If the Republicans control both bodies, we might be able to hold that down for a while and at least move the line back a little bit, and depending on what happens with Trump getting elected, there's some positive movement. It's not all gloom and doom, but the way the legislature has been going with the personalities and who's been in charge and bipartisan, coalitions and Republicans bringing in tons of Democrats that get to do all this stuff, it's not that encouraging to me to watch that, because they're not dealing in reality. They're dealing in their political and ideological utopia. But that math-wise, that math thing that comes back to haunt you is not going to work. And I'm just looking at them asking the same questions, right? It's like I asked on the floor of the debate about overriding the governor's vetoes, Mike. I looked across the room at everybody. I said, who in this room can guarantee me where this money's going to go to the teachers? Anybody? Nobody would look at me, including the people sitting behind me.
Right.
All the teachers with their big red buttons on, 1413 BSA. Show me the money. And nobody would look me in the eye, Michael. Why? Because they know. They know that the money isn't going where it's supposed to. They know we can't afford that.
Well,
we're going to have to do something.
Yeah, you tried to get the accountability on there as well, and they said, "Oh no, we couldn't do that. We couldn't guarantee anything. We couldn't give you metrics. We couldn't do." I mean, come on. You want more money, and it's like Cliff Groh. Oh, we just need more money. We just need more. How much is enough? How much is enough?
Infinite, Michael.
It's never.
It will never be enough.
Never.
Ever.
Enough.
It was the alleged finance director years ago. I remember sitting at the table. It was like, Alaska doesn't have a spending problem. Alaska has a revenue problem. The supposedly objective, unbiased, nonpartisan opinion of the alleged finance director that gives us all the numbers that we're supposed to work with for creating the budget said we need more money. You don't have a spending problem. I mean, when you have that kind of leadership in the state government, where do you think this is going to go? When you have the highest per capita government workers in the nation, where do you think this is going to go? Where do their interests lie, Michael? And what's benignly best for the people in the private sector, or what's best for them? And I don't even blame them, because we're human. We want what's best for us. If I can get a defined benefit plan and forever increases to my pay and health, well, that's what I'm going to shoot for, right? Why wouldn't I? But the problem is, the rest of us, we got to pay for that. So, anyways, I don't know. It's a diverse. I love that word right today. It is a diverse and complicated problem, and there are no easy solutions, unfortunately. But a solution is going to hit us over the head, whether we like it or not, sooner rather than later. So I just would prefer to do it in a controlled. What was it? Ever heard of Bob Hoover? Remember him? Air show pilot, very famous.
Yeah,
Anyways, he's an icon in the industry. Amazing story. I'll talk about one day meeting him. But he used to say, if you're going to crash in an airplane, you fly it all the way into the crash. In other words, once you're about to hit the ground, you don't let go and go, oh, whatever happens. Like, you fly it as far as you can, because then you're going to have a better crash landing, better chance of survival. I'm kind of that mindset. I'd rather fly this thing into it while we have some control than just let go and go, well, whatever happens when we crash, we all die. It all burns down.
Right.
No, we can do better than that.
Yeah.
And we still have a chance to. So I'm going to keep fighting to try to enact that while we have a shot at doing it better than just an uncontrolled crash. And who knows what the damage is going to be to that. And it's not something I want for Mike, because like you, I've got kids, I got grandkids. They all live here. I want them to have a better shot at it. And we're going to have to do better to ensure we leave a better future for our kids. We've got to do better than what we're doing.
Yes,
have to.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. All right. State Senator Mike Shower. You feel better? I mean, is it, you feel?
Well, it's almost like I had 3 or 4 cups of coffee. It's like the best wake up, mojo ever.
Every morning you have to come on here, and we're going to have to chat until you just lose your mind. It'll be fun. All right. Well, Mike Shower, thanks so much. Are we good for next week, or what? I'll
let you know. I've got some training. I might be busy again, so I might have to defer to the next one, but we'll talk. I'll let you know early next week how it looks.
That'll be good. All right. Thanks so much. When Cliff Groh goes to sleep at night, he checks under his bed for Mike Shower. Oh, man. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mike. It's good to talk with you, brother. We'll see you again soon, okay?
All right. Take care.
All right. Folks, we're out of time. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Please like and share. That's all I can ask you to do. Like and share. Like and follow. Do all the stuff. We'll see you tomorrow, folks, with Lee Ellis and Lise Galvin. Have a good day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.